Myself all morning. Come up here, I see a couple of girls in kayaks. Man, something big just jumped over there. I don't know if you can hear them, but they're making a racket. They must be college girls. Non-stop chatter. I guess they're having fun then. Troll north, and just as I came to the mouth of that cove, same as the one just south of here, caught two fish, two little white perch, very small. I had another bite. So that's probably the pattern for these white perch. I could probably stop the boat there and make some casts and just catch them one right after the other. That's not what I want. We'll go up here about another 3/4 of a mile. That's where the creek gets very abrupt. You can be ankle deep casting into 8 feet of water. That's my catfish hole in the summertime. I'm sure there's fish all through here. I just don't fish it very often because it's so shallow. I find it difficult to troll. I'm too old to cast. But in the wintertime, if we have a very cold winter, I can drive across that bridge and look this way, and I see birds, seagulls diving all over the place out here. So I know there's bait up in here. So where there's bait, there's liable to be game fish. I just don't get up here that often. It takes a lot of battery juice to make this trip. And the last time I was up here, I believe, was with my buddy Scott. Things were a little misleading. The wind was out of the south and we were kind of protected up here. But when we started back home, not only was it squalling, but it was blowing to beat the band. We came out underneath that bridge and I had to bail the boat constantly. It got so rough it threw him out of the boat. That was an interesting trip that day. Let's hope that doesn't happen. This bank now, and you can see where there's like a little trail coming down into the water. Apparently there's a school of white perch or something small here. Both my poles for the past 50 yards have just been dipping down. But they haven't been big enough to stay on it. Probably just as well I don't feel like unhooking another white perch today. I don't know if you can see that standing timber up there. Guess we're about a 1/4 mile away from it. That's a place I like to fish. I don't know if anything's there today, but July and August, that's a good spot. Might bring somebody with me this summer. Let them enjoy that. I got this camera attached to my hat. Hard to twist it around. I haven't had many fishing partners. I'm old, but when I was in the Army, I had one. He drank himself to death. And Harold was my fishing partner. He got cancer and passed away. And Tom Bro, he's been my off and on regular fishing partner. He's gone now. He had a heart attack this year. So, if you want to go fishing with me, keep that in mind. That front seat might be like the drummer for Spinal Tap. You're liable to spontaneously combust if we get out here on the lake. Good luck. I'm not going to go any farther up this river. I know that in the early spring crappies will travel long distances to get to the shallow water. But the water temperature is probably up in the 70s now. Spawn's probably over. I was hoping they would be migrating back to the main lake down that creek. I didn't catch any. All I got was those small white perch. So I'll move over to this side of the creek. It's not very wide. It's probably only 20 yards wide. And where you see this standing timber is very shallow. So I'll ease my way back down towards that bridge way off in the distance. I'll cast some of this timber. If that don't work, I'll go to a spot that's not supposed to have any fish, but I usually catch some there. I have worked pretty much that whole stand of timber almost to the end of it. Normally I wouldn't fish that much standing timber, but this is a situation where there's a pretty pronounced creek that runs right parallel with it. I was thinking fish could be anywhere along that edge. Normally if I find a pile of standing timber out in the middle of the lake, I would only fish like the point of it, or wherever there was something really different about it. So I'll fish this point. If I don't get them, I'm going to go back underneath that bridge and go as far as I can on this battery. Wind's picking up a little bit. Battery's getting weaker. I have a spare in the car, but the sun is brutal today and my skin's just not used to it. I may not be able to last through another battery charge. I'll see how I feel when I get down that way. 4 hours of trying, I finally caught my first crappie. Not very big. And he's just out in the middle of nowhere. I'm in the middle of the lake. Maybe that's the pattern. Book on how to catch crappies has two main things. It says, number one, crappies always like to relate to structure or cover, something like that. And secondly, always have your bait above the fish because their eyes look up, not down. Well, there's a place here on Beaver Dam. I haven't tried it today, but it's my go-to spot. And if you were to look at that on your depth finder, you'd see no reason at all to fish there. There's no creek channels, no nothing. It's not near the bank. It's not deep water. It's not shallow water. It's like 7 feet deep. And I found it when I was fishing out of my inflatable boat. I'd paddled upwind and then just let the boat drift downwind, dragging 2 poles, and I mean literally dragging them. The poles were just steady dipping as the lure drug across the bottom. And I had one of my best fishing days. I don't know what those fish are doing in there. Maybe there's some kind of worms that come up out of that part of the lake. I don't know. But they are definitely feeding on the bottom. If I tried fishing above the bottom, I got very few bites. But as long as it was digging a trench across that sandy bottom, I was hooking them. If my battery lasts, I might try that today. Swim bed in this cove. I've made 10 or 12 casts in there, and every time I get a bite. They seem to bite it all the way back to the boat. I don't think they're big enough to get the lure in their mouth. Wish I'd brought my fly rod. Throw a little fly out there and see what it is. Oh man. There used to be big brim in this lake. Back when they first dammed this thing up, I mean just huge brim. And I haven't caught any the past 20 years. I catch a lot of small brim. I don't know what happened to the big ones. I think maybe it's all the little green sunfish they stocked in here sort of took over. When this thing was first dammed up, it was just amazing. Brim that weighed over a pound, common, and lots of them too. And there's still plenty of cover. It's not like they took the cover away. This is still up here on the shallow end of the lake, and it's the right depth for brim and the right habitat. Just not any big ones I can find. My boat's making a lot of noise. I don't have it balanced properly. I took the seat out this morning to make more room for my legs. I should have left the seat in and brought my spare battery with me. When Tom Bro fished with me, he weighed enough. He'd keep the front end down. Didn't have to worry about chop too much. I'm a little out of balance now. I got my fat butt, the battery, and the motor back here. Nothing up front to speak of. I do have some jumper cables, so next time I come by myself, if I think it's going to blow, I'll probably just, instead of putting my battery back here by the motor, I'll put it up front and just run the battery cables back to the motor. That'll help balance it out. This is an interesting area over here. All these coves I've been in are just loaded with little tiny brim. I mean just a couple of inches long. I can see them darting all over my lure. Hadn't caught any. But this area doesn't get fished very much. I mean, it's a long, long way from the boat dock. I don't think the average person would come this far to fish. So there's probably places in here where there's a 10-pound bass. Probably never seen a lure as long as they've lived. And there's plenty of food for them with these little brim and those little white bass. But I don't feel like throwing a bass lure. I'll continue to troll. Water here. I threw up against it and got a bite. I don't know what it is. What the hell is that? Oh, it's a largemouth. Not very big. A bit bigger than the other ones I caught this morning. Oops. Well, that's how not to pick up a bass. Just broke my rod in half. He probably only weighs 1.5 pounds, but that's a lot to lift with a little rod, a little crappy rod. It's fun catching him. Well, I got plenty of spare rods. I just don't know if I feel like taking a reel off to put this reel on. Lazy bones. Finally caught one of those brim. This is bigger than most of them that are out here. Most of the brim I'm seeing are smaller than that, but that's pretty damn small. That's why they're having trouble getting my lure in their mouth. I just saw a school of gar up here in this cove. I don't know if they'll hit that spinner. I know they would hit that jig. Let's see what happens when I throw it. Getting those little brim bites again. There's a swirl right there. It would be fun to hook one. Yep, had a nibble. Crazy day. It's been pretty good action for most of the day. I'm still up here on the shallow end. It's taking me forever to get back. If you look at an old topo chart of this lake, Beaver Dam, up here on the northeast side, north of the causeway, if you look along that shore, you'll see an old pond. And I have fished in that pond before. It's not exactly, I mean, the terrain today doesn't look the same way it did back when they took those early pictures. But the pond is there. If you got a depth finder, you'll find it. It'll be real shallow water all around it, then all of a sudden you fall into about a half-acre pond. I don't know if I'm going to stay on this shoreline far enough to fish it today or not. I'm burning up out here. I'm tempted to just make a beeline to that bridge and work my way back to the truck. I used to love the sunshine, but after that medication I've taken this past year, it's made me really sensitive to it. I'm already beet red. Maybe I'll just put my jacket on and stick it out. He hit this spinner hard. I don't know what it is. Find out here soon. Hope I don't break another rod. Oh, it's a little catfish. Man, he slammed that thing. Catfish on a lure. Told you so. Surprisingly, when I pulled out that plug, the other side was still fat enough it fit in there pretty tight. I don't know after I make a few casts with it if it's going to stay together. I guess all I have to do is put some super glue on it. Well, Finally got south of the bridge. That took forever. Now a moment of decision. Do I go back over the area I fished this morning, which is one of my favorite spots? Maybe the fish have finally moved in there. Or do I go down here to a place where I normally catch some crappies? I don't think I got enough battery to do both. We'll see. Man, I'm making a lot of noise. I believe we got a fish on here though. Probably another one of the small whiteys. I'm back on the south side of the bridge now. That was insane on the north side. When I decided to leave up there, I just cut straight across, and I don't know how many white perch I caught. If I'd had a kid with me, they would have felt like they were in heaven. Now, that's my second crappie of the day. Ain't much to him. But I'm getting close to the area where I normally catch some crappies. And this is a good sign. Yeah, I lost count. It had to be 40 or 50 of those white perch. If you got a small child, it doesn't care how big the fish are, he just gets bored easily. That would be the place to take him the first week in May. They might stay there all summer, I don't know. They might be gone next week, but that's the way it was today. And you don't need to be all messed up with bait. You know, when you take kids out, it seems like all you're doing is baiting a hook. I'm just throwing a little small beetle spin with a grub tail on it, and then a 1/16 ounce jig with a 2-inch curly tail. And it's a nice clean way to fish. Nice and simple. Good luck to you if you try that. Well, my hot spot ain't too hot. As you can see, a pretty good distance away from anything. This terrain here is basically flat. It may drop a foot every 100 yards. There's no creek channels around. And I usually catch fish here for some crazy reason. Maybe I'm making too much noise going against the wind. I'm going to flip it around here in a minute and go down sea. Control real slow, let my lures go to the bottom. And if that don't do it, I'll get back in a creek channel and jig that little George. That's probably going to be a mistake, but if I don't get hung up, I might catch a fish. I can't tell you how often I get hung up with a little George though. And it's a lure that's hard to get back. I don't care. I've enjoyed today. If I don't catch anything, that'll be my motivation to head to the truck. It's getting hot. But got a bite. Let's see what we get here. It's got to be nice for me to turn around on it. Otherwise I'm going home. It's pulling pretty good. Oh, it's a white perch. That's a lot bigger than the ones I caught earlier today. They don't get much bigger than that in this lake. Thank you. Well, at the end of that point up there, I turned left. That'll take me back to the truck. But this is a sweet ride right here. I came across to the east side of the lake. The wind is out of the east, so it's pretty calm over here. But it's not making any noise. I'm not using very much energy. I've got the motor on low, so I'm sure I'll have plenty of battery to get back. Just caught a pretty nice white perch. If I don't catch another one, that'll be okay, but if I do, that'll just be sweeter. And it's possible I can catch another one before I get to the home cove. Well, this might be the last fish of the day here. I'll be able to see my truck in just a minute. What have I got on here? Maybe it'll be a crappie. I've only caught 2 crappies today. I don't know where they were. but I didn't get on it. Come on up here, let me see what I got. I ought to stop the darn boat, but I'm trolling 2 lines. There's a catfish on that spinner again. That's right, Mr. Cat. Beaver Dam. It's such a nice lake. No motorboats allowed out here. It's a nice quiet day on the lake. And the people out here are nice. You don't hardly see many. But the ones you see are not very competitive. They're just very cooperative. Everybody shares information. But the fishing has changed. I remember about 12 years ago, I used to come out here every day after work and fish along that roadway there and just catch as many crappies as I wanted. I mean, catch 20 or 30 per hour. And you could always tell when they were biting because they'd be lined up almost shoulder to shoulder with people. And that usually started in May. And I'd fish over here and start in the middle of April and catch carp. But the past few years I haven't even seen any carp around this area in the shallows. One person fishing off the bank and he doesn't look like he's very excited about anything. Well, I'm just thankful I got my little boat. Now I hope I can get it back on the car, on the trailer. The wind's been blowing from the east, and I'm on the east side of the lake, so it's blowing a lot of water out of here. I may have to get wet to get this boat back to the shoreline. It was hard launching it this morning. It's going to be harder getting it in, I think. But I'm not afraid to get my feet wet. May have to pick this motor up almost like a Asian sampan. I'll be blowing water 10 feet high. Get that propeller skipping on the surface. Land ho. Yeah, I'm going to have to raise this motor. This ought to be interesting. Might be able to make it. That front end's lifted up enough, but I can see bottom there. I'm going to tear this motor off the bottom of my boat. Couldn't quite make it. I might be able to jump that far. Pull it up with a rope. That battery's sunk down in the bottom. Woo. Hard to move. Getting too old for this. I got my toe wet. Look at this. Here we go. Man, I'm staggering around like a drunk. Well, if I had a nickel for every white perch I caught today, I could buy me a couple of tall boys. Or at least a 40. See y'all next trip.